Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network. Excited to be with you after the draft. We are now officially entering the offseason. I mean, we'll have rookie minicamp here soon. We'll have OTAs and mandatory minicamp following that. And then we get the true dark period of June where there's nothing. So we got a little bit going on here, end of April, beginning of May. But for now, we got to recap this draft class, the 2024 new Los Angeles Rams. We'll see how long it takes, Skinny T, but maybe we just hit our 10 picks today, and then we'll hit UDFA's next episode. Dive into all, 12 editions they made on that. So we'll see how the day goes. But we got to first talk about all these 10 drafted guys because it was a fun weekend. I think a good overall draft for the Rams. We'll get all into it. But first and foremost, my man Skinny T. Busy man, busy week. A lot of great work you did. Thanks for your tireless efforts. But how are you doing on this fine Monday?
Well, all that tireless effort did catch up with me. I caught a cold at the very end yesterday. I felt it come on, and today it's still around. But I'm here with you guys, so I can't ask for anything more than that. Talking ball, this is a nice job if you can get it, and we got it. So we got to spend what was it? We decided this is our fourth draft covering the Rams and LA football together. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, very awesome. Pretty crazy. And all very different locations, I think, in a way. We were at the Line Hotel one year in Vegas. And then I guess we've just been in LA at our respected homes the last 2 years. So
yeah,
that's good. Excuse me, that's been nice. But the show goes on. So even though colds happen, I appreciate you. Thanks for putting the pipes and the lungs to work here. And battling that cold, but obviously I hope you feel better. Drink lots of hot toddies. Those always seem to help me. But show is always brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's the number one source for all your summer sports this season. All the latest stats, news, and scores are available to follow for all of your favorite teams. Are my Nuggets going to close out the Lakers tonight? I don't know. It's probably not good for me to say on an LA show. But yes, I am a Nuggets fan, and they are up 3-1. Depending on when you listen to this, series might be over. It might be going back to LA for game 6. We shall see. But all of that can be bet on at betonline.ag. And tell them the guys over at the Rams Skinny sent you. All right, Skinny. So 10 selections. They did make a trade up, so they go from 11 picks to 10 picks. Still a heavy draft class, a good one. We're going to kind of go player by player, give our thoughts. We won't spend a ton of time on Jared Verse because we did a whole episode kind of on his selection after round 1, so you can check that out if you want to hear a little bit more. But we'll at least touch on it as we've let it digest over the course of the draft and the weekend. Big pick. Well, let's not even go. We'll go big picture at the end. So let's just start with that. So Jared Verse. Really quick, don't spend a ton of time, but now that we've seen all the other picks come through, obviously heavy defense overall, just your now 4-day later thoughts on the selection of Jared Verse at 19.
Yeah, I just keep liking it more and more as the time passes, especially if you look at how they built this draft class. It's worked out really well for them. The board fell just right to them. They made the board fall right for them for their next pick, but you look at what they lost in Aaron Donald and how can you possibly replace that? First thing you got to look at is what are you trying to replace? You're trying to replace somebody that has impeccable work ethic and is just kind of a bad man down there in the trenches. And Verse is that guy, just a powerful edge rusher, brings a lot of pass rush acumen to the position. Probably rises to the very top of the Rams depth chart automatically for day one, and so he is a part of the solution to what do we do without Aaron Donald on this defense. So without having to dig too much deeper than that, he's a bit of an anomaly in terms of what the Rams have done for this position in the past, but that's what they needed to do without Donald. Donald was always that load bearing wall. this is the first step in trying to rebuild that wall. He's not going to be Aaron Donald. He's not, I'm not predicting this guy to be a Hall of Famer, 3-time defensive player of the year, 8-time all pro. But what I can say is he is going to be a big part of this defense and a big part of the success of the 2024 Rams. At this point, he's kind of the Obi-Wan Kenobi. Our only hope.
Nice. Well, hey, Coach Henney had a glowing review, or a glowing review, I should say, saying, basically that he should be the most productive defensive player of this class, and he loved the pick. So part of that production, I think, is going to be because he's basically almost guaranteed to be a starter as a rookie. So they're going to get a little more production when you get more reps. But I think it was more on the fact, at least Coach Henney's saying, that he's, pro ready right now. He has the body size for it, the type. You mentioned the ability that he has, the bull rush moves and capability that he has, and just how he'll fit within this defense and the new kind of transformation that they're making and philosophy they're making with this defense and the prototypical type of players now that they're building around. So it was a great pick with Latu and Turner both off the board and Murphy off the board. He may have been their top choice anyway. We'll never know. But certainly after those three guys were gone, he was certainly the best player available, and they were able to get him without having to move up or anything like that. So we said it last time. I still agree. It was a home run pick for what they needed and what they got. And, if you can get BPA and it's what you need, that's pretty good. So solid pick for, what do you give it, an A?
I'm giving it an A. Yeah, definitely.
I think I can go with an A as well. So, all right, on to the second round here. And here's where we got, and I feel proud. We'll do a little patsy on the back. We were talking after our round one recap about going into round two and like, will the Rams stay put? Will they trade back? And I was pretty confident they would be trading up with 11 picks. I thought that the second or third round was one of those they would move up to get someone. Well, they move up in the second. And correct me on all they gave up. Basically, they gave up their second to move up, another mid-round pick, and a second and 25. So a fairly rich move up to go up to 39 to select Braden Fisk, Jared versus teammate at Florida State. Before I say anything, your thoughts on not just the pick, but also the trade.
The trade on its face, that's a big move. So if you grade it just in that kind of way, it doesn't look very great. But, like piggybacking off of what I was saying about Verse, they have to do a lot at these positions to make up for what they lost in Aaron Donald. So taking a big swing on a guy that they like, there's no way the Rams would do this for just like some guy.
Yeah.
They see him on the board. They know he's going to go soon. Defenders really started coming off the board at around this time, as you noted when we were watching this together. And they had to make the move because he was going to come off before 52, which is with their original second round pick. It's a big swing, but I like it. I like that they're aggressively trying to find answers on defense. This is exactly what we wanted them to do. You and I mocked edge rusher in the first, defensive tackle in the second a couple of times when we did our mock drafts. So I think they had to go after it. What are your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, this is where, when you're a fan, and even a lot of analysts and content creators, not just fans, but you see mock drafts, you see the mock draft simulators, and everyone kind of had Fisk slated as a late second, third round kind of. I think we even mocked him once in the third round because he was there in the PFF mock draft simulator. He was available in the third. And so on the surface, everyone's like, wow, you give up this capital to move up to get a guy that could have been there in whatever, later, either at your pick or even later in the third. I think it's safe to say that that would not be the case. And even if it was, it's almost like, who cares? If he's your guy, don't take that chance. You go up and get him. Now, I remember when it first happened and I was like, ooh, you're basically giving up 2 2s and another mid-rounder to move up in the second. That's pretty steep. And I think I saw a tweet today, I can't remember who it was by, but when averaging the values of like draft pick values. It was like the most expensive trade up that wasn't a first round trade up kind of thing that we've seen in recent memory. I'll have to find it. I can't remember exactly, but it was an expensive trade up. But I think when you look at fit, 6'3", 300 pounds, when you look at production, 5 years of college experience, 4 at Western Michigan, 1 at Florida State. Last year, 6 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, like 43 total tackles. And then when you look at compatibility and playing next to Jared Verse, who they took in the first, sometimes you have that and you can combine the two and you get, it's almost like you get one like Super Saiyan, right? You get one super player instead of 2 separate players. You get one tremendous player because they've piggybacked off each other for an entire season already, and so they can build upon that. So after it digested, I think it was great. You look now, then you scale back, kind of big picture, and I'm drawing a blank on the number. Was it 7 D tackles win the second round?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I mean there were 4, just kind of 4 or 5, just in that 30s to 40s range that went off the board, one after another.
And right away in the second, Johnny Newton went, and I think there was one more, and then they traded up and took Fisk. But they would have potentially, at 50, if they would have waited to 52, there may have been no I don't think there was any D tackles left if they would have waited, let alone Fisk. We're talking none. And then you're waiting till you're not going to reach for a 5th or 6th rounder in the 3rd round. So you're waiting and getting someone in the 5th or 6th when you could have had a bona fide starter just to trade up a little bit. So to me, it was a fantastic move. We'll see how it pays out, obviously, but if Fisk gives you even spot starting capability, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 30 tackles this year, that's already worth the trade up right there.
Yeah, and you start looking at the depth chart and you go, oh yeah, Kobe Turner, that guy's pretty good. Mm-hmm. So he's not only going to reunite with his former teammate. He's going to meet his new teammate at some point, and we're going to have a what's the reunite? Unite. He's going to unite with a
just
Kobe
unite.
Turner. Wow, his head cold. So looking at just a quick glance at this draft at the D tackles that were taken, Rook Ororo.
That's right.
I think I nailed it that time.
Yeah. It sounds wrong, but you said it correctly.
Yeah. Jazon Newton came off the board. Tavondre Sweat came off, which people were not expecting that one. Then Braden Fisk.
Yeah.
So that's 4 right there. And then, Michael Hall Jr. came off in the second. So it was,
the LSU guy came off early. And we thought like Mox had him going in like the 5th or 6th, and he went in the second.
Yeah. So, the quote that I saw that I was really, really excited about was from Jared Verse himself, which he said, the only person that's ever matched his kind of grit and motor was Fisk. And you kind of you pull out a little bit and you see this defense and you see the pieces that they've added since Donald's retirement. Those are kind of the traits that are like top of list, motor and grit, because that's what defined Aaron Donald as a player is just grit, determination, his work ethic, and all that stuff. So this is another guy that fits that profile. Is he the prototypical size? No, he's got shorter arms than Aaron Donald does. He's got that T-Rex thing going for him, but you can make up for a lot with enthusiasm and athleticism, and he has both of those in spades.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real bring your lunch pail to work kind of defense, which, hey, we love. Anything Absolutely. We can reference a bring your lunch pail to work kind of thing is great by me. What's so funny, Skinny, is all last season we talked about how the Rams have always been kind of this Hollywood glitz and glam, showstoppers, showtime. And last year we started seeing that transition of grit, like the old Pittsburgh Steelers, if you will, like not as smash mouth as them, but much grittier, much trench warfare kind of thing. And now we've seen it in the offseason and the draft now as well, as that being the new mentality. Like, yeah, there's still some glitz and glam in there for sure, but it's definitely more of a lunch pail kind of team here moving forward. And so I love the Fisk, body size, he's like Greg Gaines, but I think he has more talent and a little more athletic ceiling than what Greg Gaines had. So But he'll plug that middle nicely at nose, and we'll see who ends up getting more of the starting reps between him and Bobby Brown. But at least they addressed it and have some depth and talent there. So moving to the third round, and this I feel like I didn't see a ton of fan. I mean, obviously we saw fan reactions, but I was, we were busy doing our own thing to just be like scrolling. But I feel like it was a little mixed on how the Rams go running back in the third, which we knew they would go running back at one point. They had to add a running back at one of their now 10 picks because they traded up. But they go in the third. They get Blake Corum out of Michigan, who a lot of tread, ran a lot, but you could argue is the best back in this draft, depending who you talk to, how you look at it. Jonathan Brooks was probably out of Texas the consensus best, but Blake Corum's right there. Me and you really liked Audric Estime. I mean, you could go back and forth. It wasn't like last year where it was oh geez, what's his
Bijan
name?
Robinson.
Thank you. Whereas Bijan and everyone else, like there was some debate. They go Blake. I'll give my thoughts, but you first. What were your thoughts? Obviously we're together, but when they took Blake Corum as their first offensive player taken.
Yeah, I was among the people that was pretty confused by this. I thought they would go something that was a bit more complimentary rather than, Blake Corum is basically a higher end version of Kyren Williams.
Yeah.
You look at his age, you look at the amount of carries. He's had over 500 carries the last 2 seasons as a starter at Michigan, going up against those, stout Big Ten defensive lines. And you got to wonder, about anybody that's running in the Jim McVay system, how much of it is just the fact that Jim
Did you say
Harbaugh.
Jim McVay?
I did. Jim Harbaugh.
I love it. You're just combining them too. So yeah, that's great.
That's a weird combination.
It took me a minute. I'm like, did you say Jim McVay?
So I meant anybody that's running in a Jim Harbaugh system. He builds just offensive and defensive lines. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, is it just because he's running behind those big backs that he has the kind of productions, or those big linemen that he has the kind of production that he's had over the last few years? We don't know. We don't know the answer to that. But he's not a huge guy. He's 5'8", 200 and some odd pounds, 220 maybe.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a lot of carries that go for more than 10 yards, more than 15 yards. He doesn't offer a kind of a home run hitting. It's not complimentary to me. It's like they're both kind of doing the same thing, Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, which I get. They invested a whole bunch of money into the offensive line. They're going to create a lot of room for those guys to move back there. I just wanted something that was going to be a change of pace rather than another guy. They're not getting a guy that can necessarily catch the ball out of the backfield again. What is he going to look like in pass production or pass protection in the pros? Wasn't necessarily bad in college, but that's one of the big leaps that guys have to make from college to pros. These guys are just a lot faster coming around the edge. Yeah. So, third round seems a bit rich. And again, another guy, Audric Estime, not even 21 years old, Audric Estime. He had, fewer than 400 carries the last 2 seasons. So, a lot fresher, a lot bigger. I can just see him as a better guy in pass production than Blake Corum. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I really like the player. I just don't totally understand the fit. And there's 2 ways to look at it, right? The way we're looking at it is, and we're not running the team, but if I was, like, I want, and you mentioned complementary back, someone that does something different than what my starting back does. Blake Corum is a great all-around tailback, so they got a great player. Yeah. But like you said, he does a lot of what Kyren Williams does. So the way we're looking at it is, if I'm adding a back, I want either a absolute game-breaking burner that's just a speed guy, or I want a bulldozing bruiser, short down yardage back that can also spell Kyren on some of those situations, but gives me some versatility otherwise. But those are kind of the 2 cogs I'm looking at, because Kyren's, to me, my 3-down do it all. He can catch in the backfield. He is good in pass pro. He can run the football well, obviously, but he's not totally a burner. He's definitely strong and can break tackles. And if you need him in short yards, he can do it. But if we can have a guy that's 240, 230, 225, I'm going to feel a little better about that. To me, they decided that they want to essentially, the offense will never change, no matter who's on the field. If it's Kyron, if it's Blake, we're running the same exact systems, right? We don't have to have play sets designed for specific backs to be in the game. So, hey, if we're running this play, we need this back in the game. If we're running this play, we need this back in the game. The way they spun it up was no matter what we run, our backfield is tangible with what we want to do. So if you agree with that philosophy, then hey, then this was a home run pick because they're getting the same player essentially, and they'll never have to worry about who's in the game specifically. But if you want to have packages that feature certain style of runners necessary, then that's where they missed on this. So it kind of just depends on what side I think you align yourself with. I don't hate it. I'm not like saying it's a terrible pick. I don't think, in my opinion, I would have gone the other side. So for me, this is like a C plus, B minus. Again, love the player. I like the compliment better, but I don't think it's not a terrible thing.
Yeah, and I think going back to just the draft capital that they used on it, could they have found a guy like that later on? Probably, but like you're saying, you like the back, fits their system, fits what they're doing. And I questioned if the Rams offense was a Kyron Williams away from being an elite, and that's what it was. That's what they needed to unlock it. So definitely not mad at it. You look at some of the other positions they could have taken at this point, and I kind of look towards wide receiver at that point. Cornerback is a little bit questionable there. Quarterback is also like, that's what we wanted there. Spencer Rattler is still on the board at that point. I won't try to talk anybody else into that, but you look at the wide receiver room, and you got a bunch of guys that are off contract next year, including Demarcus Robinson. You've got Cooper Kupp, who's 31 years old now. And other than that, you got Puka Nacua. So that position group is going to quickly become something they have to address in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And they really, and we'll get through it as we go through each player. We'll probably speed up here as we go down, but they did take a receiver in the 6th round. But here in the 3rd, I mean, there were a lot of good targets there. I mean, some local guys that ended up not even going till the 7th, but you had Rice and Washington, they were still there, but they obviously could have waited longer. But guys like Troy Franklin out of Oregon, I think could have been a big pick. He went in the 4th round. A lot of guys there. You mentioned the quarterback, but so go to the now 5th round, right? No 4th round pick.
Yep.
5th round. And sorry, they had one more 3rd round pick. Excuse me. Still in the 3rd round. They stay on defense with safety Cameron Kinchins, not Kitchens, close, but Kinchins out of Miami. And, this is they added Cameron Curl. So we got 2 Camerons now in the backfield. It was looking like, we have a lot of offseason still, but it was looking like as it stood before the draft, you'd be seeing Cameron Curl and probably Russ Yeast as your 2 starting safeties, with, other guys kind of slotting in with nickel or star or however you want to move them around. But probably the 2 starting back ends would be Yeast and Curl. So Kinchins will have the opportunity to kind of win that job over Yeast, former 6th round pick, and potentially be a rookie starter next to Curl. So, what's your thoughts overall on the positional value, and then obviously Kinchins in general?
Yeah, again, I'm looking at a wide receiver and cornerback at this point over a safety, but this guy's got a lot of fun upside. He had 11 interceptions over the last 2 years, a bunch of passes defended. He's not the most athletic guy, so they're really betting on his football IQ to not get them burned in the secondary, because a guy that's got that kind of production is a bit of a ball hawk, which they need. Last season they were towards the bottom of the league in takeaways, and that's got to change if they want to make it deep into the playoffs. Those are big game-changing opportunities for them. So, I like them trying to go after a guy like this. And the big trusting factor is that he's got that kind of football IQ, and he's going to develop, and he's not going to leave them hanging out there in the back end. Because, a guy like Cam Curl also isn't necessarily that kind of rangy, coverage first kind of safety. He's kind of, he's going to be up towards the line of scrimmage a bit more. He's going to kind of be in that Taylor Rapp kind of role a bit more. I mean, he's going to be a lot more than Taylor Rapp, I do believe. But you think about John Johnson, you think about Jordan Fuller. Those guys are cerebral, like field generals. Like Jordan Fuller wore the green dot. I think John Johnson probably did at one point as well, where they see everything, and that's probably, they're not going to ask him to wear the green dot. That's Ernest Jones. But that's what they're going to have to rely on him for.
Yeah. Yeah. And shout out to you. You actually, in your safety targets for the Rams, had Kinchins as a second round target for the Rams at 52, and they get him at 99. So, so nice job on you shouting that prospect out as a someone to look for, and they ended up pulling the trigger just a full round later. And I won't add too much because I agree with everything you said. Definitely, led Miami both years in interceptions, with 6 and 5 respectively, and also, I don't know if it's worth noting, but listed on the roster, not on the Rams roster, but on his college roster as a DB. So potentially shows you versatility. He can play kind of all over. But I think certainly the thought is that the duo of Cam in the backfield in terms of safety. So overall, I think this is a solid pick as well. What grade do you give it a grade?
Yeah, I'll grade this one at a B, just a solid B.
Solid B.
Like looking at the draft class in general, like they did such a good job at staying disciplined, going after the things that they wanted to, or that they needed to go after. And I think both of you and I were looking at each other going like, who are these Rams that are just being like very disciplined and picking up exactly the players and the positions that they needed.
Yeah. It was bizarre. It's like, there wasn't a lot of shock and awe. It was just basically like, they probably need an edge here. They draft edge. Oh, D tackle is what they need. There we go, D tackle. Safety, it's the only one they didn't kept doing was receiver, which is shocking. That's the one where like, okay, that's an obvious one. They didn't do it. So
the quick note on Kinchins, his snap counts: free safety, 379 snaps last season. As a slot corner, 112, and in the box he played 110. So they did move around quite a bit. So that's exciting. They're always looking for those versatile guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That versatility, I think, is huge and probably a big reason why they pulled the trigger on him when you see safety. And as we talked about, like, do they really need to go save this early? But DB, that opens things up differently because if you can play some corner, play in the slot, well, then you check that box that they needed. So great. So, all right, now we go to the 5th round. No 4th round pick. It was a long wait. Excuse me, on day 3 for Rams fans as we waited for this 154th overall pick. They go with edge again. 2 edges already in their first 5 picks. Brennan Jackson out of Washington State played 5 seasons at Washington State dating back to 2019. Finished last year with 8.5 sacks, 12.5 tackles for loss, and 57 total tackles. So pretty good production there in the Pac-12. Your thoughts on Brennan Jackson here?
I think this is another attempt to add power to the pass rush. Not that outside linebacker that they've always added. He's a lot more like Jared Verse in kind of his body type, kind of how he plays the position, how he uses his power. And, again, one of the things that Dane Brugler points out about him is he's a gritty guy. He's a working guy. He's a, lunch pail guy, high motor guy. So we're seeing these patterns emerge as they step away from that old style edge rusher that they've always targeted in the past. You look at even Byron Young. Byron Young is just an athlete, just fast and rangy and bendy. This guy isn't that. He's not bendy. He's just going to push you straight back. He's got, some tools, but his main thing is he's going to come in and push guys around. And that's, again, going back to it, that's what they lost with Aaron Donald. First step quickness, just get into the gap and cause some havoc in there.
Yeah. Another, long tenured guy, obviously playing 5 years in college and a lot of production over those 5 years, but also a lot of experience. And I think that was the other thing with this draft. And we'll even talk about it with the next guy. But when you look at Verse, I know it's over 2 schools, and Fisk, it's over 2 schools, but these are all guys with 5 years of collegiate experience and using that extra COVID year or a redshirt year to get really, versed, pun intended, in their craft. And I think Jackson is another example of that. And yeah, you mentioned it, not necessarily your bendy, twitchy guy, but another really strong bull rush. When you look at 6'4", when I say 255, I mean that's a big, strong edge player that can really bring it. And we'll see what kind of speed he displays around the edge. But certainly they seem to be putting an emphasis on that power and toughness and grit and lunch pail. So I think another solid pick. They needed depth at this position. I mean, they needed a starter first and foremost, and they seem to have gotten that with Verse. And then they needed to add depth after that. So I think it was another solid pick with Brennan Jackson out of Washington State. So moving on to the 6th, where the Rams had 4 picks in this 6th round. We can go kind of hot and heavy with these fairly quick. First, they get their 2nd defensive tackle. So at this point, only one offensive player through 7 picks now in this draft. Tyler Davis out of Clemson, defensive tackle, another 5-year player dating back to 2019. Comes in at 6'2", 300. So, big body to plug the middle there. A little bit less production, Skinny T, in his final season. Played all 13 games. Upped in tackles a little bit with 34 total tackles. But 3.5 tackles for loss, 0.5 sacks, whereas his previous year in 22 had 9.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks. So I'm not saying there's necessarily a reason for concern, but production was a little bit down this season, but showed you kind of that ceiling that he can get to playing at a premier program like Clemson and able to gather that kind of production. So another great depth piece that I think will have the opportunity to be a rotational player right off the bat, even as a 6th round pick. But just based on size, pedigree, and some of the production we saw late in his career, has an opportunity to really, make a name for himself here in Los Angeles. So your thoughts on big old Tyler Davis?
Yeah, I think he's kind of an answer to where Braden Fisk leaves questions, which is in the running game. Fisk is that quick step, first step into the gap, getting into the backfield kind of guy. And Kobe Turner is similar to that. He's a bit more sound in the run game. But I think this is a play to make sure that they are gap sound, with Bobby Brown and Tyler. Those guys are going to place probably some of the early downs. That's when they're going to see their opportunities. And he also has a really high floor. I don't think his ceiling is anything that's going to blow anybody out of the water, but this is, a guy that you need on the defensive line. It can't be all flash. This guy's not a lot of flash, but he's in there and he's going to hold his own.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I like that addition in the run game potentially, which certainly, certain situations then he could fill in and on down and distance and sack situations, you have different packages. So you want to have a little bit of versatility there in terms of player type and player expertise when it comes to those. So good one there. So next pick's in the 6th, the most exciting pick of the Rams draft. They address the need for a kicker. Joshua Carty out of Stanford with the 209th overall pick in the 6th round. Big kid for a kicker, 6'3", 205. Oh. I mean, geez, you play receiver. I mean, what is he doing playing kicker? That's a body for a lot of different positions, but he was a kicker. In 22, Skinny T, he missed one extra point, 24-25, but he was 100% from the field, 18 of 18 in his field goals. Last season, he was 100% from extra points. Remember, college extra points are different than pros. They kick it from the 2-yard line, not a 33-yard kick like they do in pros. So a little misleading, but 23 of 27 in his field goal kicks. You'd love to see the percentage there a little higher, but 6th round, this is where you take flyers. They had to have a kicker on the roster. You got to have someone to come and bring competition. What's your thoughts on old Joshua Carty?
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting stat that I've seen is that 20 for 21 from 40 to 49 yards. That's a really good, good range for him to be kicking from. Only missing one kick. Most of his kicks that he's missed have come from beyond 50. Last season, 3 of the 4 were missed from that place. So, I love taking a shot at a kicker in the 6th round. This is a good place to get him. I think Will Reichert came off just a couple picks. Yeah. So that was my guy, but I might even like Cardi even more. I like my Ivy Leagues guys, and he's a West Coast Ivy, so coming out of Stanford, gotta love that. You never know what's going to happen with kickers coming in the draft. We've seen guys like this come up before and just drop out of the back of the league at some point. We've seen guys come from Major League Soccer and do really well. We've seen UDFAs come and do really well. So there's really no guaranteed way. And it's funny when you're looking for scouting on kickers, even Brugler, he just puts height, weight, what school he's going to. All these guys, all these places that pride themselves on having this comprehensive coverage of all the draft picks. So my wonder is there just like a gaping hole in scouting, and that we just don't know how this mysterious unicorns operate? Like we always say, you got one job. Can't we figure out how to scout these guys better? Period. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, I mean, I guess similar to coaches and GMs, like media and content creators don't care about kickers either. I mean, just no one cares. I don't think they're just like basically look at a stat sheet, 85%. All right, bring him in. They don't even care what he looks like, body type, range. Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be a need until all of a sudden you don't have one, and then you realize how important it is.
It drives me insane though, because I've said it 100 times before. It's like these guys can win you games, they can lose you games.
Yeah.
You look at the 49ers, they draft Jake Moody last season. He misses an extra point in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That game goes to overtime basically because he misses a kick.
Yeah.
They could have won that game. I mean,
he was a third round pick.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so it just drives me crazy that, especially the fact that the Rams have always kind of kicked this can down the road, found themselves in bad situations year in and year out, trying to address it. So I'm glad I give this an A+ just because they took a chance, and we'll see how it pans out. But, I'm starting it. Like I'm going to become the world's foremost NFL kicking scout, period.
I love that. Skinny T between the pipes. So there we go. Well, Cardi B gets a A+ from Skinny T here, but yes, a great pick. That brings us to our next 6th round pick. Finally, I mean, I guess no, kicker special team doesn't even count on offense. So another offensive player, only the 2nd at this point in the draft. We're at pick 213. And at this point, there had been one offensive player, Blake Corum. They pulled the trigger on a receiver, Jordan Whittingham. You didn't give this a very high grade, so I don't think you love this pick. What's your thoughts on Whittingham?
It's aged on me a bit better. Whittington, by the way.
Whittington, sorry. Yeah, yes, it is. Right. Yeah. I'm reading it for some reason. Just naturally, anything Whittingham seems to fit better.
That's the one I went when I was typing it up. I was like, nope, that's not right. But it's aged better on me. I'm a bit more intrigued by his physicality and what he can bring to this offense. I've kind of, my initial reaction was this is a Ben Skoranek kind of replacement guy, a guy that's going to have automatics contributions on special teams and not much in the passing game. Mm-hmm. But he's intriguing. He's kind of untested, not a lot of production, obviously playing at a big school, but he's still kind of a mystery. He doesn't have like kind of the athletic traits that the Rams have really valued, the kind of high miles per hour that Van Jefferson and Cooper Kupp displayed in their play speed, but you look at Puka Nacua, he wasn't kind of a blazing speed either. And this is a position that they've proven to have some ability to scout really well. Now, saying that, they have struck out on the last. You can't really say Van Jefferson was a strikeout necessarily, but they didn't sign him to they traded him away last season. Tutu Atwell has become what he's become. We'll see if he has anything to offer in his final season. And then Ben Skoranek, was a bit of a clutch player that had to come in that Super Bowl winning season. But So I'm kind of two minds. I'm more of a wait and see on this one rather than I also gave him a bad grade on that one because I feel like they should have taken a receiver earlier.
Yeah.
I would have flipped it. I would have gone running back at this point, and but
Yeah.
they don't care what I think.
I care what you think. But even
Appreciate
just looking at and I'll give but even just looking at the receivers there on the board, I mean, again, I know we're a little bit homers here because it's in LA, but also we got to scout them a lot. And Brennan Rice was still there, a guy with 12 touchdowns last year. And high production between two schools and seemingly got better, and well, not a ton of production in Colorado, but seemingly got better and better and better as his years went on. And Tosh Washington, who wasn't the most needed fit for the Rams because he's more of a slot guy and they could kind of have that covered. But still, when you look at a guy, high motor, lunch pail to work, can block, that's what you get with the Taj Washington as well. So, and then some other names we could throw out, but that I think is why I didn't necessarily love the player at this moment. However, what does intrigue me, Skinny, and I haven't scouted a ton of Whittington, to just be honest, but when you look at his last 3 seasons and you look at his average yards per reception, starting in 21, 14.5, 22, 13, last year, 12. So definitely more of that kind of mid-range to long-range type of receiver that is going to be able to stretch the field for you. Maybe not a complete burner, but you're going to be hit. Stafford can find on those deep crossing routes, those deep post routes, those deep out routes, and let, Cooper Kupp and Nakua do their thing. But if you need that kind of deeper mid-range to long-range stuff, that seemed to be his bread and butter. By, if you're averaging 12, 13, 14 yards a catch, I mean, that's the first down every catch. So you love to see that. You have 42 catches. You're basically getting a forced down on almost every catch, if that's your average. So that I think was was intriguing to me when you see that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and he is a contested catch kind of a ball winner there. And I feel a little bit burned by the Rams because I got all excited about Allen Robinson's potential at that kind of spot, and he's kind of an Allen Robinson-ish kind of a player. And I'm not really, I can't throw my weight behind that again until Matthew Stafford proves that he's going to target guys that don't necessarily look open. He's all like, if you look at the yards of separation through next gen stats over the last 3 seasons since he's been here, he's always targeted the guy that's been the most open via separation. And this guy's not a separator. So I'm keeping an open mind to it. Definitely. I like his physicality. I like his ability to be a gritty guy that's going to pick up yards after the catch. Can he be that like Deebo Samuel kind of guy? He's he's a taller dude, so I don't know if that's in the cards, but yeah, I'm open to it. I would love to see an additional wrinkle where they use that kind of a guy. You don't want to target Cooper Kupp kind of in the flat anymore.
Yeah.
You want to get him in space and in motion and at top speed at this point. So maybe he'll get some playing time with that. Maybe he's that kind of DeMarcus Robinson. Maybe he can develop into something like that.
Yeah, that's a good shout, and I think something we'll watch develop as it goes. So, all right, second to last pick. Finally, a fun name here. We get Bo Limmer out of Arkansas, center, with the 217th overall pick. Needed to add some depth on the offensive line. Again, I think overall I was very pleased with the Rams draft overall up to this point. Was a little surprised that they waited this long to add a single offensive lineman. Obviously, that was their point of emphasis in free agency, but you still got to add some depth pieces. So I was surprised they waited this long, but they do get their center depth piece in Bo Limmer. There's probably offensive line's always hard in these later rounds to really talk a ton about, but just your thoughts overall on the selection.
Yeah, they had to add it, and they waited till the end to add it. So, I mean, you just hope you got those 3 guys in the middle who are just so big and stout, and you just hope they stay healthy because outside of Joe Noteboom, I pointed out it last time, there's not a lot of depth there, and you don't want even Joe Noteboom, even though he's getting $11 million as a cap hit. You don't want him in there. Maybe let's see him at guard again. That would be maybe in a preseason game we'll get to see that.
Yeah, there you go. So And then, yeah, again, I think it's they need to add depth. So, and they round out the draft, 7th round, adding depth again, adding KT Leviston out of Kansas State, listed as a guard. So you go center guard in the draft, add depth here. I mean, this kind of feels like, when they added Tremaine Ankrum a few years ago, it's, a guy that's going to be a nice practice player, can spot fill in if needed. But you're not looking for, starting potential here. You never know. These guys can hit, but we'll see how they kind of develop. We'll see if Logan Brust can make that jump. He's been on the practice squad and their former first, he was a 3rd round pick, but their first pick from 2 years ago. See if he can kind of jump in. And all of a sudden you have some decent depth there. If you have, these 2 guys they drafted plus a Logan Brust, I think you could have some value there. So your thoughts though, overall on finishing out the draft with guard Leviston?
Yeah, smart. I mean, they had to add it here. And only a disaster if we see these guys play. So,
yeah,
we don't practice effed, I guess, is the whatever that Indianapolis coach said about Peyton Manning.
Great quote. I think it was Tom Moore who said that, former offensive coordinator there, on why they never give the backups any starting reps. And yeah, we don't practice effed because if Manning's out, we're effed, basically. That's what he was saying. So, well, there you have it. So just to wrap it up, what do you give this overall draft class? It's been 2 days since it's been wrapped up. We've yet to see anybody on the field, but as it stands right now, what overall grade do you give our Los Angeles Rams?
Well, as critical as I may have come across, I hope I didn't come across too critical. I'd like to look at these things with a fine-tooth comb, so I'm not trying to be too critical. But my overall grade, I'm super happy with this draft class. I think, I love that they just stuck to the guns that they needed to stick to, and I'm going to give it a B+.
There you go. Yeah. I feel the same way. I'll go even a little higher. I'll go A-. Maybe that's a little too optimistic, but I think they did very well. There was all the smoke and stuff leading up to it. Are they just going to go all in on this offense and just really almost abandon the defense, but have this offense be one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen? And they did the opposite. I mean, they went primarily all defense. If you don't count those last 2, very last picks on the offensive line, there's only 2 other offensive players outside from the defense. So they truly addressed what was needed. They went after, high quality players that showed high production, had high reps. So they've been there. They're not going to have to take a ton of time to develop. They can kind of hit the ground running right away. And so I think a lot of this draft class, we can see, even if they don't win starting jobs, we'll see them on the field much sooner than later, which I think is great for where this Rams team sit right now, especially with the retirement of Aaron Donald and whatnot. So yeah, I'll give it an A-. Look at us.
Yeah.
Look at us. A-, B+. Well, there you have it quickly, because this has already been, 45 minutes or so. Just quickly want to mention it came out kind of during the draft, kind of a underlying news that quarterback Matthew Stafford wants a little bit of I don't know if they called it a restructure, but basically wants more guaranteed money for his contract. He's under contract through 2026. But this season, 2024, is his last year of any guaranteed money. The final 2 years of his contract, he has 0 guaranteed money. So when I first saw it, thought it was kind of a non-story, just, wasn't really thinking about it. And then, McVay had to kind of address it. Like he jokingly, not seriously, but jokingly talked about how, thanks guys for making it awkward, bringing it up. Like, yeah, we're keeping it in-house. We're talking. Like, I'm not concerned, but is this more of a story, Skinny, than it may have seemed right at first?
I have a really hard time making what this means for this Rams team. On one hand, we were talking about it a little bit beforehand, and does this mean his intention is that he wants to stay longer? Or does it mean that he wants to retire with a nice retirement package, all guaranteed for the next couple of years? And, this is a business, and it's maybe he was looking over at Kirk Cousins and looking at that $110 million that he was guaranteed, and seeing that they just drafted a guy in the first round. They ensured that they have a real replacement in house if something happens. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to. I mean, he's made a lot of money during his career.
Yeah.
So
and we'll make $49 million this year. So
yeah, 31 million of which is guaranteed already. So you can't blame a guy for wanting to make sure that the team is committed to him in a long-term sense of the word.
Yeah.
And the Rams want to keep him around. They're going to come back to the table and they're going to work something out. The Rams' one big bargaining chip is, hey, you've been injured. Hey, you're not a spring chicken anymore. So let's work something. Let's find a good compromise for both of us. And his bargaining chip is, I got you guys a Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Pay me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think this is a huge. I mean, it shouldn't be a huge worry, I should say. I mean, both sides are gonna work it out. This feels kind of just to add basically what you already said, but it just feels like Stafford making sure that he's good, because I think, him and the Rams have a great relationship. He obviously has a great relationship with McVay and with Les Snead, the GM. But it's a business at the end of the day, and if he were to get injured at the end of this year, going into next year, if the Rams found a replacement that they liked, I mean, they could just say, okay, you have 2 years left in your deal. We don't owe you anything. We're just going to move forward with this guy. So, he's got to watch towards the end of his career, making sure he gets his guarantee. It'll get done. The Rams took care of Aaron Donald when he retired. Stafford, like you said, brought him a Super Bowl. He's the face of the franchise right now. It just feels like a need to have that security blanket for when he does hang it up, or if there, God forbid, any injury, that the team doesn't decide just to move on and kind of leave him out. Again, he's making $49 million this year, so I don't think he's going to be hung out to dry. But when you look at it from a market standpoint and market worth, he's worth a guaranteed contract to finish his career, I think. So I think they'll get it done, and we won't have to talk about it once training camp starts, hopefully.
Yeah, and the team owner has got pretty deep pockets. I think he should be okay to sign a check off there.
Yeah. The
the
only concern that we talked about off air for the Rams, and this is where it becomes a little bit of a story, because on the surface you're like, yeah, just take care of him, give him fully guaranteed, he's the face, like he's not going anywhere, make him retire, he's going to retire here. But, and again, neither of us, I would say, are contract experts. So if anyone out there knows more, feel free to talk. I'm not saying this is the absolute law, but based on the knowledge I know, if the Rams were to make, let's say, his final 2 years fully guaranteed, and let's say he retired after this year, well, then those 2 final years, they're on the hook for in terms of cap, unless they do a restructure similar to what they did with Donald. But even still, a lot of Donald's pay is against the cap. So that's where they could hurt themselves if Stafford does retire, where next year, let's say it's $60 million of their cap is to 2 retired players. Like, that screws them over completely. So there is a little bit where this could become a story. I don't think it is right now, but it could become a story if things happen in the future similar to that.
And in our defense, as people that were pro, drafting a quarterback in this draft, this is when this becomes much more important. This is when, they really don't have any leverage of, we got to pay Stafford because we got Garoppolo on 1 year. He's not going to be around in 2025. Who knows what Stetson Bennett is, and Dresser Wynn is a guy named Dresser. So they don't have a succession plan, and that's where that would come in handy at that point. Is, hey, like we believe in Spencer Rattler, or whoever.
Yeah. They should have. They did not.
Yeah, so that in our defense, that's where that gives them a bit more leverage that they currently don't have.
Yeah, and I think that them not drafting a quarterback, from my eyes, shows they have more faith in Stafford staying healthy than it does they have faith in Stetson Bennett still being the future. I could be wrong on that. But to me, it's more of them saying, we have at least 1 more year where we need to address this, because we feel great about where Stafford's at, feel great about him staying healthy, his toughness. So we're not going to use one this year, but next year, then I think it becomes real noise that they're going to have to go quarterback at some point in the draft in the final 2 years of Stafford, entering 38 years old or whatnot. So I could be wrong, but I just see it more as confidence in him, not necessarily confidence that Stetson Bennett could still be the future. Could be wrong, but I don't think anything has shown us that he is the future.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't bet on that at all.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go to Bet Online and bet on that. That's just not what I would do. But anyway, anything else to add, Skinny?
No, I mean, this is the time of all optimism. So you guys just keep believing. Each one of these are future Hall of Famers, and
yeah,
until the season starts, that's where you should be.
10 future Hall of Famers, but maybe we should first start. Let's hope at least one of these 10 gets signed to a second contract, because that last class that just hit that 4-year mark, none of them did. So let's hope this is the class that they get a re-signed there. But yes, so later in the week, we'll hit the undrafted free agent list. 12 UDFAs added to the roster. None, biggest one, I mean, I don't know about biggest, but I really like Justin Dedich, added out of USC. Again, homer a little bit because it's USC, but what I liked about him, which we'll talk more about, but tons of versatility on the offensive line. So that could be something intriguing. But we'll dive into the UDFAs later in the week. I don't know what the heck has happened to my voice, so I need to jump off this microphone. Skinny T, you're the sick one, and you sound better than me this entire time. So thank you for gutting it out, for your analysis all weekend long. Your hard work has been great. Thank you all, the fans, for tuning in and hanging out, reading all of our draft coverage. We certainly appreciate it. It was a fun draft season. And now we head into kind of the off season of looking forward and getting ready for this season schedule release in a couple weeks, hopefully, that we're going to talk about and have some fun with that. But for now, for the Rams Skinny, I'm Ryan Dyer. That's Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. Everyone have a great couple days. We'll talk to you towards the end of the week.